So Isaiah and Stockton, that's the biggest thing. It's like, you could say whatever you want about era. You put Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Oscar, West in the 80s, and they're going to find ways to be an MVP type player at least a few years. Isaiah and Stockton didn't. Yeah, the game's changed. Yeah, you tried to beat the big guy. Yeah, it wasn't a three-point era. But again, burden of proof. Curry, 6 top 7 finishes. Oscar, 9. Paul, 9. West, 7. Isaiah and Stockton, 1. Nash, 3. Good evening. Michael Steven here, one half of the Raw Sports Debate duo. And tonight, I'm here to readdress the top 10 point guards in NBA history. I'm going to actually expand it to 15 this time. Now, I recorded my top 10 about 2 months ago, and it was completely spontaneous, off the cuff, no preparation or organization whatsoever, just a random stream of consciousness, which I think there's a certain beauty in that. And I stand by everything I said. But in the last couple months, I've gone back and said, hey, would I still say this the same way right now? Did I address all my biases? Did I address the game itself and, eras and everything like that? Because the bottom line is I'm talking, we're in 2022 here, and I'm going over guys from 1960 and guys in 2020. The game has completely changed. The amount of teams, the athleticism, the competition, the rules, obvious ones like the 3-point line, defensive 3 seconds, zone defenses, and just everything about the game itself is completely different. And therefore, we can look at numbers. We can try to compare numbers across times, but the best that we really can do is compare the dominance that they had in their respective eras. Because shooting percentages in the 60s are a lot different than shooting percentages in the 90s, which are different than shooting percentages now. So that being said, let's get going. Number 1, LeBron James. LeBron's the best point guard of all time. He has an argument as the greatest basketball player of all time. I personally would still pick Michael Jordan, but I am okay if you pick LeBron as long as you give me the right reasons and you explain it in an intricate way. I just think Jordan has the better court case. But I do think LeBron has the best case to be the second best player. There are other guys with an argument. Kareem, Russell, even a few other guys if you really want to make that case, but I would go with LeBron number 2. So therefore, considering he's handled the ball and handled the rock as much as he's played power forward, small forward over the course of his career, listen, I'm ranking a point guard list. I said it last time, I'll say it again. Anyone who could be considered a point guard, I'm going to consider as part of this list. I'll stop at guys like Kobe and Wade. Yeah, they handle the ball, but they're obviously shooting guards. So those guys won't be on this list. But guys who I may have forgotten last time, I'm going to make sure they're on this list. So LeBron, let's talk about the game itself first. Excellent scorer, even though he's a pass first player who loves to get his teammates involved. He understands the 5-on-5 game. One of the best passers of all time. Great rebounder, outstandingly versatile defender, especially early in his career. He hasn't been as great lately, but the way he would step up and stop a D Rose in the playoffs, but then go match up and guard, a bigger power forward. His versatility was excellent. And let's think about, how do we measure people in the regular season? MVPs? Yeah, it's the opinions of others, but Generally, if you're one of the best players in the league, you're going to get a few and you're going to have a lot of top, 3, 5, 7 finishes. Well, LeBron's got 4 MVPs. It's a short list of guys that have that. 12 top 3 MVP finishes. 12. Now, we know he was one of the best players or the best player in the league for a full decade, but 12 top 3 MVP finishes is outrageous. Outrageous. He's got 15 times in the top 7. 15 years where he had an argument. And that just shows durability. His durability is ultimately unmatched. Maybe Karl Malone, Kareem, a few other guys, Stockton, but LeBron's durability is unbelievable. So you think about his playoff numbers. Again, he sometimes got criticized for not scoring enough. Well, LeBron in the playoffs averages 29 points, 7 assists, and 9 rebounds a game. 29, 7, and 9. In the finals, I believe that's 28, 8, and 10. So obviously, all around excellence. Shooting percentages, well, I'm going to go with true shooting. For the purposes of this, I'm going to keep it consistent. Now, true shooting, I'm going to break down for everybody. I don't like formulas because formulas cannot be proven. So you talk about, player efficiency rating, win shares, box score plus minus, value above replacement, player, Raptor, certain things you really can't, like you understand how they come about, and they come about from you could see a lot of it, but some of it is just intangibles that you bring and the impact that you have on winning. A lot of that could hinge on your teammates and your coaching and your organization. So that's a formula at the end of the day. True shooting is not a formula. True shooting is numerical. When I talk about shooting, it is how many 2-point shots did you take? Like what percentage of your shots were twos? How many did you make? What percentage of your shots were threes? How many did you make? What percentage of your shots were free throws? How many did you make? Kobe, sometimes he's the guy I go to as an example. He didn't shoot as well as some of the other greats from 2-point range, but he always grinded his way to the line 8, 9, 10 times a game and made all his free throws. That matters. That ups your percentage. Steph Curry, his field goal percentage may not be that high, but then if you actually look at, he took so many 3-pointers that it warped it, and the 3-pointer is worth, 50% more than a 2. It's 3 versus 2. And, Steph going, 2 for 6 from 3, 33%, is the same as Shaq going 3 for 6 on layups and dunks. Now, there's a difference in terms of gravity and spacing the floor versus getting the other team in foul trouble, but that's a whole nother conversation. We want to just keep it straight numerical. So when I bring up true shooting on this, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, hey, LeBron shot, in his playoff career, his true shooting was 58%. So what does 58% mean? 58% means, I believe this is how it works. If his true shooting is 58%, that would mean multiply it by 2, because you're taking all threes, free throws, twos, putting it in a pot, and making it one possession. So you multiply it by 2 to equate it to a 2-point shot. 58% times 2, we got 116. That's 116 points per 100 possessions. Just like our offensive rating. Now, what are the best offensive ratings of all time for teams? How many points would you score per 100 possessions? 115, 116. It's like the all-time best. It's not points per game, it's just points per 100 possessions. It just keeps pace relative. And I think that's the best way. A lot of people look at per 75, but I'm just doing per 100 just to keep the numerical, just to keep everything in line. It makes it a little easier to explain and, multiply it by, 3/4. So LeBron, 58% true shooting percentage in his playoff career, 29, 7, and 9. Incredible. Now, number 2, Magic Johnson. Those same numbers, Magic, 20 points, 12 assists, 8 rebounds per game. 20, 12, and 8. So he scored about 5 less buckets than LeBron, but he assisted on about 5 more than LeBron. So, if anything, he created more points, although it's harder to score. So Magic's playoff career, 2012 and 8, 60% true shooting, because Magic was an underratedly very good shooter. Got to the line, knew how to get to the, game the refs like all the great players do. He had size, and he knew how to take the best shots for him. And he was an underrated scorer. Now, so think about that. He actually scored more efficiently in that era than LeBron did. Magic had the good fortune of, unlike LeBron, of walking onto the team, being drafted by the Lakers on a team that had the best player in the league at the time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now, Magic came onto that team, helped lead him to the finals. So he helped rejuvenate Kareem. And Kareem, at that point, was dominating the finals against the 76ers. They're up 3-2. Kareem suffers an injury. Magic steps in and plays center. Everyone thinks the Sixers are going to take it now. And what happens? Magic plays center and famously puts up 42, 15, and 7. 42 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists. They win, and the rest is history. Magic goes on, makes 9 finals, and wins 5 championships. 9 top 3 MVP finishes. A whole decade where he was the top 3 player, because it was him, Bird, and Jordan. Kareem fell off. Guys like Barkley came on. But it was really those 3 for the whole decade. Obviously, MJ kind of came in 84 and became the 3rd or 4th best player immediately. Then he kind of eventually took off. But Magic held on for a while, in my opinion, just off the top of my head. It was Kareem, and then Magic kind of took it over. Actually, I would say that it was Kareem and Moses Malone. Magic was starting to come on, but he didn't have the skills that he had later in his career, actually, at that point. Larry Bird, I believe, was a better player from 83 to 86. Bird took 3 straight MVPs from 84 to 86. And then Michael went in there and stole one with his unbelievably dominant 88 season. And Magic won the MVP in 87, 89, 90. And in those 89, 90 seasons, he was putting up 22 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds, I think, in the 2 seasons combined, 22, 12, and 7. He's producing close to 50 points a game. And he's shooting 50% from the field. He's shooting 90% from the line. So he won 3 MVPs, 9 top 3 finishes. So just an unbelievably dominant player. I put LeBron over him because LeBron is more physical, a better defender, and a better scorer. They're about even passing. Magic never really got a chance to experiment with the 3-point era. But I think all things considered, you look at all angles, LeBron 1, Magic 2. Now it gets interesting. I don't know who to put number 3. I believe, and I've really researched this over the last couple months, thought about it, wrote down some notes, talked about it with friends. My 3 through 5 are Steph Curry, Oscar Robertson, and Jerry West. And like those 3 are in a group right there. And then number 6 is by himself is Chris Paul, my favorite player, who I originally put number 3, but I also said, hey, 3 through 7 could be interchangeable. Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit on that. Did it have a little bit to do with the fact that I thought the Suns would win this year? A little bit, but you can't change the past. Whatever happens this year doesn't change the past. I just think that the game is the game, and, when you can have an argument. Chris Paul has an argument to be number 3. He does. But is it as strong as these other arguments? No, and the ultimate factor is injuries. Bottom line is, yeah, Chris Paul didn't play with the players that Curry, Oscar, and West played with, but he also got injured too many times. He's got amazing longevity, 17 years in the league, but he doesn't have the the super high ceiling late in the playoffs like those guys had, like it or not, fair or not. So my 3 through 5, my order as of right now, but try not to, be wishy-washy on this, but it's how do you compare Steph Curry with Jerry West? It's so difficult. I'm going to go with Steph Curry, number 3. And I'm going to go with Jerry West 4 and Oscar 5. And here's why. Steph Curry has, as of current day, made 6 finals, and he has a chance to win his 4th ring. So he's got 3 rings right now, has a chance to win 4. He's an unbelievable shooter. He's the best shooter of all time because he can shoot from all ways. There's 3 ways you can really shoot. You can shoot off the dribble, creating your own shot, even without a screen. Sometimes he uses a screen, but sometimes he doesn't need it. You can just catch and shoot, or you can run as fast as you can, come around a screen, curl, catch, fire, like Reggie Miller. Steph can do all 3 at an elite level. I don't believe there is anyone else in the history of this game who can have the combination at that level. Damian Lillard might actually be second if you look at those 3 realms. But you just think of guys off the top of your head. Reggie Miller wasn't creating it off the dribble. Ray Allen was close, but he was more of the other 2 where he's coming off screens and he catch and shoot, just deadly at both of them, but not as great as Steph just creating the shot. Klay Thompson, same thing. So the versatility of his shooting was unbelievable. He has a certain element of gravity where you have to guard him 25, 30 feet out, and that just opens the floor for everybody else and himself to go in. But really, when you have to account for him, it changes everything. So that's the way I look at Steph. He's a very good passer, excellent scorer. In the playoffs, he averages 26 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds a game on 61% true shooting. So now his true shooting in the playoffs is better than Magic's and LeBron's. Now, he's got 2 MVPs, 3 top 3 finishes. So now only 3 top 3 finishes compared to the other guys with 9 and 12, and 6 in the top 7. Steph is the one knock I'd have on him is that it took him a while to get going. He's only had about 8 years where he's been a top 10 player, but kind of like the way I talk about Russell Wilson. It's like, hey, listen, hasn't he done it long enough? And it's like whatever reality you want to create, you can create with this. Steph Curry was incredible last season in 2021, but his team was the 8th seed. They lost in the play-in tournament, and they didn't get to play in the playoffs. They should have in the old school rules. Yeah, he finished 8th. But Steph, it's like if you were a Steph denier, you'd say, hey, he didn't make the playoffs. But guess what? Kobe had some issues too. When he had the team with infamously Smush Parker and a couple of these guys, they ended up with like 7, 8 seed and got bounced in the first round. It happens to everybody. They didn't have a good team last year. Draymond wasn't around, and Draymond's very important. He's one of the best defenders I've ever seen. So the way I look at Steph is he's just different than other players. I use his size against him. So yes, he's a great scorer. He's a great shooter, obviously. He doesn't instill the same level of physicality and fear that someone like Magic and LeBron can. He just does it in a different way. And, it's funny. He should have been the finals MVP in the first finals run. I think he averaged something about like the 26, 6, and 5 that he averages in his total playoffs as of right now. That's basically what he had in the finals. But because, Matthew Dellavedova was dogging him and LeBron was so dominant, they gave it to Iguodala just because he had some timely shooting, timely passing, and relatively stopped LeBron. It was ridiculous. They should have given it to Steph, or if they're not going to give it to Steph, they should have gave it to LeBron, because LeBron had ridiculous numbers those finals, and he basically personally dragged it without Love and Kyrie there. He dragged it to 6 games. And, the first time they created the NBA MVP for the finals was 1969. They now call it the Bill Russell Award. Ironically, Bill Russell was the player coach who won that finals, but they gave the MVP to Jerry West in a losing effort because he averaged about, 40 a game. He was unbelievable. And the Celtics won by 2 in Game 7 on a shot that like hit the rim and bounced up and went in. So all that being said, Steph he's made 6 finals. He's so easy to build around. He always moves without the ball. I can't stress, even as just an amateur player myself, just locally. I didn't play super competitive basketball, but I understand what it's like to have to guard players who play like that. And consequently, how easy it is to play with players that play like that. It just makes things so easier. The defense always has to account for them. They're always seemingly open. And then if you move, it's just perfect harmony. There's a beauty to the way that he plays that's so portable. You could put him on any team and he'll be fine. So I'm going to rank him 3rd. That being said, you are perfectly within your right to rank him 4, 5, even 6. Because my next guy, Jerry West, was phenomenal. He made 9 finals. It was easier to make the finals. There weren't as many teams, but it was harder to win the finals because of the lack of free agency and how dominant Bill Russell and the Celtics were. Jerry West was 1-8 in the finals. He's also the logo, and he's Mr. Clutch. Unbelievably clutch shot maker. We've all seen, those basketball historians like myself have seen the footage of him making these crazy shots. Now, in the playoffs, he averaged 29 points, 6 assists, and 6 rebounds a game. 29, 6, and 6. And 2 MVPs, 5 top 3s, 7 top 7s. Kind of about the same as Curry. Oscar Robertson, number 5. Well, the way I look at him is this. I think he averaged a triple-double over a 5-year stretch. So he has that going for him. 29, 10, and 9. 29, 10, and 9 in his first 10 seasons with the Cincinnati Royals. Incredible, right? But he only won 2 playoff series. He lost to a multitude of different teams. It wasn't just the Celtics. Now, he averaged in the playoffs over his whole career 22, 9, and 7. And, I go back and look at their field goal percentages. Both him and West are about 54%. But then you look at it and you're like, oh, wow, that was really high back then, 54%. True shooting, there's no 3-pointers. There's a lot more misses. They let more fouls go if you watch some of these games. There weren't as many. There was no analytics. You weren't like dissecting game film and stuff the way you're doing today. You have all these different coaches telling you when to shoot and how to shoot and all these things. So it was just a little bit different. The game was different. And you realize like, oh, wow, Oscar and West shot like this, but that was really, really good for that league. They were up there top 10 in their field goal percentage. So Oscar was, to me, he was Chris Paul mixed with Russell Westbrook. He had Russell Westbrook's numbers, but Chris Paul's like tough guy attitude and almost bullying type leadership and his jump shot. He was Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook. Now, again, Oscar had a reputation as a tough teammate, and I think a lot of that had to do with the unfortunate racism he faced at that time in the city where he played. And that's horrible. I mean, Bill Russell had to deal with a lot of that same type of nonsense. That's just unfortunately the way our country was at that point. That probably affected him as a man. I said that last time. I still believe that. And, Weston and Oscar didn't have the type of travel arrangements that we have. They didn't fly first class on their private planes. They got to, they just had to get things done. They probably traveled more like a AA baseball team. So, in Oscar, he had 1 MVP, 5 top 3s. 5 top 3s, just like West, but 9 top 5s. 9 top 5s. So Oscar, won 1 ring because he joined on with the Bucks and Kareem, who just walked into the league putting up, something silly like 33, 17, and 6. I just made that up, but something like that. Kareem walked into the league as the best player at that point. Will had Wilt was getting older. Russell just retired. Probably saw Kareem coming. And listen, Oscar and West, to me, are interchangeable. I'm picking West because of his incredible finals performances. I think you're just a little bit of a better scorer, but it's close. You can throw West and Oscar in either order. Both excellent players. Now, number 6, I'm reserving. So really, I look at it like LeBron and Magic, the big guys with the huge accomplishments. So you got size and accomplishments. Again, all these ridiculous amount of, they're the best player in the league, arguably. Had an argument for it for about 10 straight years. That's insane. Curry's only had a few years of that. Oscar and West only had a few years each where you can make that argument. Chris Paul, that's the thing. That's the other tiebreaker besides injuries, is that I'm not sure you could ever make the case that Chris Paul is the best player in the league. He had, I think, 1, 2, or 3 MVP cases. He didn't win them those years. He's got 2 top 3 MVP finishes. He has 9 top 7. 9. That's a lot. That shows, hey, he's in this class of players. A lot of people put him lower. But no, he is in this class of players. The problem with Chris Paul compared to these other guys is, well, he kind of had like Oscar Robertson's first 10 years. He wasn't playing with a slew of Hall of Fame players. In fact, Chris Paul wasn't playing with any Hall of Fame players for his first 12 years. 38-year-old Paul Pierce doesn't count. Blake Griffin, Tyson Chandler. How do you compare Chris Paul to Magic, who got to play with Kareem, one of the top 5 players ever? How do you compare him to someone like Dwayne Wade, who won rings with LeBron and Shaq? How do you compare him to Kobe, who won with Shaq? Curry, who won with Durant, but wait, Curry has also won without Durant. He's won with, Clay and Draymond, but Curry's been slightly more durable in the years where he's been a star. So I have to think about all these things because my natural inclination when I have been watching basketball, I became a Chris Paul fan 15 years ago. And the reason was, and I don't defend him to this day because I enjoy watching him play. I enjoy watching him play because I saw this greatness early. I saw him play in 2007, 15 years ago, and I was like, wow, this is one of the best players of all time. It's like this combination of shooting, passing, offensive orchestration, pickpocketing people on defense. This is the best pure point guard that's ever lived. And he is. He's the best pure point guard that ever lived on the video and on the stat sheet. But he's not when it comes to accomplishments because, well, he didn't win any championships. So let's talk about the game itself first with Chris Paul. One of the best passers of all time, both individually on individual seasons. So he's, 5-time assist leader, but then right now he's, I think, 4th or 5th all time in assists. He's going to probably finish, he's 3rd in assists. He's going to finish 2nd, most likely. Unless he retires soon, he's going to finish 2nd in all-time assists. He's an outstanding mid-range shooter. From 3 feet to 10 feet, 10 feet to 16 feet, I believe for his career, he's 49%. And then like the 16 foot to 23 area, he's like 46, 47%. These are all, those percentages taken as a whole are just as good, but I believe they are better than anyone else in the last 25 years. That's everybody. That's Dirk, KD, Curry, LeBron, Wade, Kawhi. From 3 to 23 feet, he can't volume score like those guys, but over a 17-year stretch, his shooting from there is absolutely top notch. You just can't get him off as much because of his size, which is a deficiency. It is what it is. He's 6 foot. These other guys are a few inches taller. That matters. I've gone up against people that are 6'8". I'm 6 foot. It's tough. It's tough when it's the whole scheme and hey, when he really needs to score, sometimes he can, but a lot of times he can't. So that is a deficiency, but his mid-range shooting is absolutely incredible. And the pickpocket, I've never seen a better natural pickpocket. Someone who they don't gamble for steals, they just get them organically. Paul has some of the best hands of all time. He's a great defender. Now, how many times has he made the All-NBA defensive team? 9 times. 7-time first team All-NBA. 11-time All-NBA in general, 4 times first team. So he is one of the best players in the last decade. His peak is higher than guys like James Harden, Russell Westbrook, because of their all-around game. They might have like 1 or 2 games where they're just scoring and they're better than Paul on that day. But in general, Paul's ceiling is higher than those guys because he can have like a 40-point, 10-assist game like he did to close out a series when he was with Houston. He finally had a sidekick like James Harden, and he gets 41 points, 10 assists, no turnovers against a really good defense in the Jazz. 40, 10, and 0. Only ever been done by Michael Jordan in the playoffs. And lately, even with the Suns at 36 years old, he puts up closeout games that only Kareem has ever had a 30-point closeout game at the age of 36. 7-foot Kareem. Chris Paul, 37, 33, and then last year, 41 against the Clippers, his old team. This year, he had a 14 for 14 game for 33 points and a closeout game. So he has these magical shooting days with the passing combined with the sound defense. And it's like, yeah, maybe a 50-point game from Steph or a 50-point game for some of these guys would be better technically, but there's no messing with these games where he goes 35 and 15 or 40 and 10, because it's like he's putting up 60, 65 points on his own, and a lot of it's scoring. And he's also playing good defense, doing his usual gamesmanship, whining with the refs. He is a dirty player. He's not, Bruce Bowen, Bill Laimbeer dirty. Stick your foot under you or shove you when he's not that bad, but he is chippy. He handles every possession like it's his last, and there's a beauty to that. Now, let's compare him to Curry. I always thought Curry had more help than him. He does. It's true. If you switch teams and you put Chris Paul with, Draymond, and Chris Paul doesn't have to guard the best perimeter guy, who knows? I don't know if they win 67 and 73 wins. I don't think so, but it would probably be close. And if Chris Paul could stay healthy, which is a problem, I'm sure they win. Now, let's talk about statistics in the playoffs. 26, 6, and 5 on 61% true shooting for Steph. And that's now Chris Paul over about twice that period almost. 20 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 59% true shooting. So Curry scores a few more baskets. Paul has a couple more assists. It's close. And again, we don't know what happened in an alternate universe, but I still am not sure who I would take if I want one guy to stay on the court at Rucker Park, to stay on, who do I want in a one game, hey, I got to stay on the court here. Or I got to be with this guy all day. I got to one series. I don't know. You take injuries out of it, I might want Chris Paul because he's a better defender, ball hawk, passer. He can move without the ball as well. But Curry just puts more fear into a defense. It's the bottom line. So I would think about picking Chris Paul over Steph Curry in that scenario. But does he have a better argument? When we're talking best players ever, does he have a better argument? He doesn't. It's like I talk about with Dan Marino and Joe Montana. You could make the case that Marino is a better quarterback than Montana, but it's a losing case. When someone has that level of success over the other person, 4 rings, 4 out of 4 in the Super Bowl versus 0 for 1. You watch that Super Bowl, it looked like the Legion of Boom and Broncos Super Bowl when Marino faced off against Montana. It wasn't because Montana was better, because Montana had a better team, and Marino was overwhelmed. Marino never made it back to the Super Bowl. He had some real blowout losses in the playoffs, kind of like Chris Paul. Lost 62-7. They both love to lose by 50 points. Now, Chris Paul didn't win an MVP like Marino, but it's not the point. The point is that how do you make the case that Marino's better than Montana when the burden of proof has to be so great for Marino over Montana? Like he would have needed to have won like 5 or 6 MVPs, made a couple other Super Bowls, and and just had better efficiency numbers than Joe Montana to compete with a 4-0 advantage. And I'm telling you, Chris Paul doesn't have that. Steph Curry's made 6 finals. He's won 3, maybe 4. Paul's made 1 and 1-0. Now, again, did he play with some of these all-time great players? No, he didn't. And when he did, he's had great success. But and would he have been injured if he didn't have to guard the best perimeter player, like Isaiah didn't have to? And, Curry didn't always have to guard the best other team's best perimeter player. Maybe he wouldn't have been as injured. But unfortunately, you look at like a court case, Paul's got the worst case. So, yeah, there's an argument for him to being 3 on this list. But it's not a winning case. So I'm going to leave Chris Paul at 6. Now, directly into what I was just saying about the burden of proof thing. My 7, 8, and 9, that's my next tier. That's Steve Nash, Isaiah Thomas, and John Stockton. If you compare, that's why I have Chris Paul in his own tier here. Steve Nash won 2 MVPs. Isaiah won 2 rings. But Chris Paul is on video and the numbers and anecdotes and everything you could look at. You just put it down on paper. It's like, no, Chris Paul's a better player. He's a better player. And wise men will disagree with that. That's cool. But let's get into why I think Nash is 7. Now, Steve Nash is a wizard passer. He's an amazing shooter, and if he played in this era, he would be a 3-point savage, almost as good as Curry. His off-a-dribble shot was incredible. Not at Curry's level, but really close. And he just had this like soccer player kind of vibe and movements that was just a little bit off kilter and very, very hard to stop. Steve Nash, yeah, he won 2 MVPs, but he only finished in the top 3 times. He actually finished 2nd the year after, and that was it. He didn't have his decade of dominance like Chris Paul. He didn't have that. He just wasn't. I don't know what to say, whether it was because he was playing, as a marginalized role player in Dallas, or he needed the 7 seconds or less D'Antoni Suns to really take off. It doesn't matter. The point is again, like I talk about with cases, it is what it is. And he never made the finals. So, yeah, there are advantages he has over Chris Paul as a player. I think they're about the same on offense. You could even give Nash a very slight edge. Very slight. I'd say it's even because I think Paul's a little tougher and get shots off in tough spots against tough teams better than Nash can. And Paul's a better defender, obviously. You can shoot over Paul, but Nash, you can body him and shoot over him. Playoffs for Nash, 17, 9, and 4 on 58% true shooting. So for as great as he is as a shooter, he did not shoot more efficiently than Chris Paul in the playoffs. Didn't shoot more efficiently than Curry or Magic in the playoffs. 17, 9, and 4 is good. And he had some real nice runs with 22 and 11. But at the end of the day, never made a finals. So I like Nash where he is at 7. I'm okay with putting Isaiah at 7, but I'm going to put him at 8. Isaiah made 3 finals, 2 rings. He's an incredible leader, super great scorer at his size because he was super quick. So always able to get a shot off. He had a year early in his career where he averaged 21 points, 14 assists. And he has some great all-time games and scoring runs. He infamously had he sprained his ankle in Game 6 of the 1988 Finals. And he scored 25 points in the third quarter right after he sprained it. Like a supernatural performance. He had 44 for the game. There was a tough call at the end of that game. Fans rushed onto the court in Game 7 with the Pistons down 3, and the Lakers took the title. Pistons came back and won the next 2 championships. Now, I appreciate what Isaiah Thomas brought to the game. I think he's extremely tough. I think he was just a great basketball player and the first pure point guard to take that position to the next level. At the same time, he finished 5th in the MVP voting one year. And that was it. 1 5th-place finish. You saw what I said with all those other guys. Sure, if you put him in today's NBA, if you put Nash in today's MVP, in today's NBA, I'm sure they'd be closer to what Chris Paul did, where he had, 9 times in the top 7. I'm sure they'd be somewhere in that realm. 5, 6 times maybe, but not 9. Again, you're talking about the burden of proof here. We even do it organically, Magic and Bird and Isaiah. It's like, I understand Isaiah was amazing, but he's not on that level. Bird won 3 straight MVPs. Magic won 3 MVPs. Jordan, 5 or 6 MVPs. Kareem, 5, 6 MVPs. 1 5th place finish. Isaiah is not on that level of player. How do you win 2 championships? He was the best player on the team, and he didn't have all these other guys. Well, listen, he had probably the best 2 through 8 in NBA history. Okay. He had Joe Dumars, a Hall of Fame 2-guard who guarded the other team's best offensive threat on the perimeter, allowing Isaiah to be more offensive minded. Isaiah has no defensive accolades. Dennis Rodman, an amazing Swiss Army knife floor runner defender. You had the Legion of Boom, 85 Bears defense. Rick Mahorn, Bill Laimbeer. Laimbeer was kind of like Draymond Green is to Steph Curry in terms of helping the leadership, helping the locker room. And you have Adrian Dantley, who eventually flipped into Mark Aguirre. You have Vinny Microwave Johnson. You have John Sally. You have a couple other guys, a couple of big-ass trees. Like, you just have a forceful team that set the tone. It would be like Chris Paul being on the Grindhouse Grizzlies with like Zebo and Tony Allen, Marc Gasol. You'd be a gritty, nasty team, and then Chris Paul could just be Chris Paul. Like, that's what it would have been like. Not Chris Paul on a soft Clippers team led by a overrated head coach going against the Grizzlies. It never flowed for Chris Paul. Chris Paul has the overwhelming evidence of being greater than Isaiah Thomas. And I know a lot of old school guys disagree with that. I'm friends with a lot of them, and that's cool. I understand their point. Hey, one guy won, one guy didn't. But when one guy shoots exponentially better, even with the 3-point range, okay? Isaiah, hey, listen, he did average in the playoffs 29 and 5. Paul averages 28 and 5. Isaiah's true shooting, 52%. Paul's 59. Okay. Even with the error adjustment, 59 versus 52. Okay, let's move Isaiah up to 55 maybe. We'll give him a little curve. Okay. That's still 118 points, 59 times 2, 118 versus 110. Even with the curve. Paul's a better shooter. Scoring is probably even. They're both great passers. Paul's a better defender. Paul's closeout games are absurd, and Paul's longevity wipes the floor with Isaiah. Isaiah was done at 30. Paul's still putting up these huge games at 36, 37. And while he hasn't won a title, it's like, wait, he's putting up these huge games at 36, 37? Well, actually, no, 37, he aged in dog years, but that's besides the point. He turned 37 and but 35, 36, putting up these games. Monster games, 33 as well with Houston. It's like, wait, what would he have done at 27, 28 if he had that kind of team? Well, this latter part of his career, while extending his ringless streak, is also showing, oh, wow, this is what he would have done with a great team or with a great sidekick. So that's why I think Chris Paul's better than Isaiah. I put Nash over Isaiah because Nash is just a better offensive player. If you put Isaiah today, I can't prove that he'd be a better 3-point shooter. I'm sure he would be. But Nash today and Isaiah today, man, I'll tell you, I really think Nash would be a better offensive player. And defense would be about a wash. Maybe a little edge to Isaiah. I think they're both clutch. I know Isaiah got it done in big games, but I'm going with Nash. Number 9, John Stockton. We talk about different realms of how to judge guys. If you want to talk about building a team and knowing a guy won't get hurt, or hey, I got not just going to stay on the court all day at the gym, but I'm going to do it for each week of the year, 52 weeks. Hell, I might put John Stockton 4 or 5 on this list because John Stockton was the most durable player I've ever seen. Now he's got records that'll never be broken. He's got, almost 16,000 assists, well over 3,000 steals. Chris Paul probably end up number 2 or will end up number 3 in both of them, but I don't know if anyone's ever going to catch him. Unless LeBron plays till he's 50, which you never know, but he's finally slowing down. Father Time is undefeated. So Stockton has this incredible longevity. Now, he had Karl Malone, which was very fortunate, but he also helped make Karl Malone. He was an incredible shooter. He was a very crafty defender, great hands on defense, very similar to Chris Paul in terms of the steals and the organic steals. I think he's right there with him too. Again, just a pure point guard. I think Chris Paul is basically John Stockton on steroids, but those steroids made him injured a little bit. Not that Chris Paul took steroids. It's an example. It's an expression. So he had those same skills, the stop starts, the changing speeds. He would make, crack back blocks and just gnaw at you, elbow you. Like he was dirty before it was a big thing. That being said, he couldn't break through with Karl Malone and that team until the late 90s, once the West had kind of died down a little bit. He had still some great teams, but it wasn't like it was in its heyday. And the main reason is that Stockton could not put his scoring up on that level. Like you talk about the passing has always been there with Stockton, of course, but he couldn't put up these 30, 40-point playoff games like Steve Nash or Chris Paul could, and Isaiah. He just didn't have that capability. And if he did, he didn't show it. I mean, his whole playoff career, 14, 11, and 3. Again, longevity, but 14 and 11 and 3 versus 20 and 8. Yeah, I guess it's the same amount of points in total, but sometimes you got to get out there and you got to score. And his true shooting was 57%. So not better than Nash, not better than Paul. Although, again, if you put him in today's era, I think you move that up to like 60%. Yeah. I think the three-point era helps helps Stockton. But I don't think that Stockton is on that level. Now, he did make 2 finals. In those finals, I think he averaged about 11 and 8. Something around there. So, again, you want to talk about, some people think, oh, yeah, he's better than guys of this era. It's like, well, because Paul's kind of in his own tier here as the pure point guard who just never made it to the mountaintop because of injuries and circumstance. Well, we put Stockton up against him. Like Chris Paul and Malone to me they definitely made a few finals. To me, like based on what I saw, but you look at Stockton and compare that, and we're like, well, he put up, let's just say 11 and 8 in the finals. That's kind of what Chris Paul did in his last 5 games against Dallas. Paul's 37, Stockton's 35. Now, guys are even more athletic now. Paul's 2 years older, a year or 2 older. And yeah, it was the Bulls. Yeah, and the Bulls are amazing, but even still, to a man, the lane's probably about the same as Paul faced right now in the second round. Like, so guys are more, they take care of their bodies better, but they don't have the kind of, the competition has gotten more fierce. So, I think Stockton obviously more durable than guys like Chris Paul, more durable than Isaiah, much more longevity, even than Oscar. But at the end of the day, again, talk about MVPs. He had 1 top 7 finish. He finished 7th. 1. So Isaiah and Stockton, that's the biggest thing. It's like, you could say whatever you want about era. You put Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Oscar, West in the 80s, and they're going to find ways to be an MVP type player at least a few years. Isaiah and Stockton didn't. Yeah, the game's changed. Yeah, you tried to feed the big guy. Yeah, it wasn't a three-point era. But again, burden of proof. Curry, 6 top 7 finishes. Oscar, 9. Paul, 9. West, 7. Isaiah and Stockton, 1. Nash, 3. Burden of proof is there. It's not met. So that's my 1 through 9. Now, what about 10? And then what about 11 through 15? Well, this is hard for me. I'm going to name you my next 6. Okay, there's my 9. I'm going to give you the next 6. Allen Iverson, Jason Kidd, Gary Payton, Walt Clyde Frazier, dishing and swishing, Bob Cousy, and James Harden. Those are my next 6. I'm going to put Iverson number 10, and I'm going to tell you why. How do I compare Iverson with Kidd and Payton? I mean, these are traditional point guards versus a guy who was just a shooting guard at heart and had the green light of all green lights. It's like he basically had a 3-0 count and he was swinging every time. Now, the thing I loved about Iverson was that he wore his heart on his sleeve. He played as hard as he possibly could. He was a warrior out there. He was one of my favorite players to ever watch. He would fight through everything. He would get in the pain. He would get guys in foul trouble. He was just so consistently aggressive. That being said, he only made the playoffs 8 times. So some of these guys have made it, Paul Stockton, twice as much. So sometimes that aggressiveness can hurt a little bit. Now, his playoff career, 30 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 49% true shooting. 49% true shooting. I can't overstate the difference between 59 and 49. 59 times 2 is 118. 49 times 2 is 98. 118 to 98 is a blowout. Iverson was an incredible volume scorer, but the way the team was constructed, he basically just took all the shots. Yeah, he got in the paint, and yeah, he allowed guys to get rebounds, but you don't get to shoot, 10 extra times and make 2 or 3 of them and like, oh, he's a better scorer. That's difficult to really reconcile. So he did have one huge playoff run where he made the finals, stunned the Lakers in one game, stepped over Tyronn Lue, became a meme for the ages before memes existed. But that whole playoff run, 33, 6, and 5. Incredible. He played 46 minutes a game, which is incredible. 46 minutes in a game. And he shot 39% from the field. So there is an amazing quality of like, wow, he was able to do that. How many guys could actually play that long and even get those shots off? I get that. He put pressure on a defense like Russell Westbrook does. I get that. And he won an MVP. And he had 6 top 7 finishes. That's why he's 10. Because he had those finishes. He was an impact player. He got his team there, but then in the playoffs, it was just too much pressure on him. Some of that was his coaching and GM. Some of it was him not balancing the scoring and passing workload. Because his floor was really low when he was turning the ball over and not shooting well. Kind of like Westbrook. His high was really high, but his low was really low. And therefore, I put Iverson at 10. 11, I put Jason Kidd. Kidd made 3 finals, dragged the Nets to 2. It was a historically weak Eastern Conference, but he deserves a ton of credit for bringing that team to 2 finals. And then he eventually won with the Mavericks as kind of a floor orchestrator with Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Terry, some of those guys on the Mavericks, as LeBron and Wade especially LeBron, folded in the finals. Yes, I know they factually won, but if they had faced a more seasoned LeBron James, that was a wrap. That was not a championship team to me. But he won. No, not taking anything away from it. Don't want to come across that way. So Kidd in his whole career, 14 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds per game in the playoffs on 50% true shooting. 50%. Not good at all. You're scoring 100 points per 100 possessions. That's bottom of the league for a team. And that's like the 15-year playoff peak. I'm not including like his time with the Knicks. Now, he was a wizard passer. He became a good off-the-ball shooter later in his career, but he was not breaking down a defense like a traditional point guard like Nash or Paul Stockton, Isaiah. He was an incredible defender. Other than LeBron, he's probably the best defender on this list. He can match up with guys 1 through 4. Just a fantastic defender, and that needs to be recognized. He finished second in the MVP one year. You could argue he should have won it, but Tim Duncan had a monster year as well that year. And he had 2 top 5 finishes. That's it. Number 12, Gary Payton, another phenomenal defender. Defended MJ as well as anyone's ever defended him, including the Bad Boy Pistons, because MJ still smoked the Bad Boy Pistons, whether we want to realize it or not. That was young MJ, though. Gary Payton got old MJ. Slightly older MJ. Tired after dominating during that 72-win season. But Gary Payton matched up with Michael Jordan incredibly well in the 96 finals. And he deserves a lot of praise for that. Now, in his 10-year playoff peak, he averaged 20 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, 52% true shooting. He had some seasons where he had 23 points, 8 assists, but the shooting numbers weren't there. Again, maybe he would have been a better three-point shooter in today's era, but he wasn't that great in that time. So he was a strong offensive player, but not on the level of a few of the guys before him, and he was a great defender. He made 1 finals, the one I'm referring to, which with Sean Kemp, Detlef Schrempf, a few of those other guys. But Sam Perkins, they had a good squad there in Seattle. And that was it. He didn't win an MVP. He had 1 top 3 finish, 6 top 6 finishes. That's good. That's good. That means you're a force in there, but put him 12. Now, it gets tough for me after this. I'm going to put 13 through 15 as Walt Frazier, Bob Cousy, James Harden. Now, Frazier won 2 championships with the Knicks. He famously had a 36-point, 19 assists performance in a Game 7, the one where Willis Reed famously came back from a huge injury, just kind of got on the court for a couple possessions, riled the crowd up, but it was Walt Frazier that won that game. So one of the best Game 7 performances in NBA history. And these one-game performances, sometimes they are important. It's important to have those monster games. Doesn't change the fact that sometimes we overstate those games. That's why Rajon Rondo is not on this list. But Rajon Rondo had a few amazing games, and it was like, oh my God, his peak is so high. But it's like 1 game out of 30. If it was 1 game out of 10, that's another thing. But 1 game out of 30, we get a little too high. And Frazier, he really only played a few seasons. And again, it's an era thing. And he was 21, 6, and 7 in the playoffs on 56% true shooting, which is solid for that era, really good for that era. But he played less than a decade. Bob Cousy, 6 championships, won his last 5 years in the league. Now, Bill Russell was the MVP a lot of those years. And Cousy averaged 19 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds a game. What he shot from the field? 34%. Again, it was a different era. But it's just hard. It's hard for me to say Cousy was a better basketball player than some of these guys. It's hard. I understand he had more accomplishments, but you put any of his guys in the non-free agent era with Bill Russell, and I'm pretty sure they're winning all these rings too. And maybe even more. So it's hard to say. Very hard to rank. If you want to put Cousy at 14, I think that's cool. If you want to take him and put him in the 7 through 10 range with Nash, Isaiah, and Stockton, you could do that as well. I'm not putting him in the 1 to 6 range. No way. No way. There's just not enough there for me. But I'm okay with you putting him 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's cool. He did finish in the top 7 of the MVP 3 times. And lastly, I put James Harden. I'd want to put him higher. I actually thought about putting him in the top 10 last time I did this. He's got an MVP. He's got 5 top 3 finishes, 6 in the top 5. In the playoffs, let's just talk about the regular season. He led the league in scoring 3 straight years. And surrounding that, he led the league in assists per game. He made 1 finals as kind of a third dog in that OKC young budding dynasty that never was. And now in the playoffs, he's averaging 23, 6, and 6 on 59% true shooting. But he's weak in closeout games. He's weak in elimination games. So while he's an amazing scorer and playmaker and passer, he doesn't move without the ball, which hurts his portability. Unlike Curry, he's like the anti-Curry. It was the issue that Chris Paul had with him. Harden was frustrated that Paul was getting old and hadn't gone vegan yet. He didn't know that's why, but that's part of it. Paul was frustrated with Harden that he didn't move without the ball, and he was entitled. Paul was right. Paul has his deficiencies, like his injuries, like his abrasive, at times, leadership to men that can't take that kind of leadership. But Harden, that wasn't okay. He didn't move it up the ball, and he still really doesn't. And, again, Paul's got check marks against him. Isaiah had some poor big games. Magic had some poor big games. They called him Tragic Johnson. Paul had some big games where he disappeared, but he also had games where he showed up and he was freaking scoring 41 points. Magic, games where he's scoring 42 points. Isaiah, games 44 points. Where are these from Harden in the big games? In Game 5, Game 6, Game 7? Where are they? They're not there. They don't exist. That's why he's 15. And he's not a good defender. He became a very good, I would say it, very good post defender. But he was not a good perimeter defender. Still isn't. And the great players pick on that in big spots. And now I'm going to rattle off everybody else. Damian Lillard, Tony Parker, Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving, Nate Archibald, Pistol Pete. Russell Westbrook's amazing, just not a good enough shooter to be on this list. Just not enough wins. He doesn't win enough games to be on this list. Kyrie Irving, same thing. Too many injuries, too many chemistry issues. The way Boston was better before him and went after him. Tony Parker was excellent, but he did win a Finals MVP, but that was Tim Duncan's team. Tony Archibald, amazing numbers, no real success. Pistol Pete, an amazingly talented player, incredible college career, but not enough success. Had some issues with drugs, but just he's one of my dad's favorite players, but just didn't make it on this level the way he could have. Damian Lillard, one of the best shooters of all time. Some unbelievably clutch playoff performances, but one of the best shots I've ever seen, that 37-footer over Paul George to win a series. An amazing player, but not on this list. And so that's my 15. LeBron and Magic, Curry, West and Oscar, Chris Paul, Nash, Isaiah, and Stockton, AI, the answer, Kidd, Payton, Frazier, Cousy, Harden. And a bonus point. Luka Doncic is coming. 32, 9, and 8, I believe, playoff averages at this current point. He's coming. In my opinion, in 2022, he will be invading the top 6 by the time he is done. So we can move everyone down a little bit. Where in the top 6? I don't think he's passing LeBron, but Magic's on the table. Curry's on the table. West, Oscar, Paul, all on the table. Luka can be that guy. He's a new age Larry Bird, and he's coming. So on that note, cannot wait to see what Leslie has to say about this. I think he's still going to be mad at me, but it's all good. We'll talk it out. I probably want to put like Iverson 4 or 5 or something, but we'll have a great talk on this. Get some other takes from some of our friends, colleagues, and other basketball fans that we know while this NBA season is still going on, and have some fun talking about it. So on that note, hope you all have a great night. Peace out.